Lieutenant Commander Marcus Hale lowered his spotting scope and shook his head with the kind of finality that came from 15 years of combat experience making impossible shots possible. Out of range, Staff Sergeant, that enemy sniper is at least 2,400 meters up on that ridge. Even with your .338 Lapua, the ballistics don't work. Wind, elevation, temperature, too many variables at that distance. We need to call in air support or artillery. Chief Petty Officer Alina Carter adjusted her position behind her rifle, studied the distant ridge through her Schmidt and Bender scope, and calculated factors that most snipers never considered at ranges where bullets spent more time in flight than most firefights lasted. The enemy sniper had been terrorizing the valley for 3 days, eliminating 6 coalition soldiers and wounding a dozen more with precision shots that suggested professional military training rather than insurgent marksmanship. Every patrol, every movement drew fire from that ridge, and conventional responses had failed. The sniper, displaced after every shot, returned hours later, continued the psychological warfare that kept an entire forward operating base effectively pinned. Behind Carter, 2 SEAL operators, Petty Officer Jake Morrison and Petty Officer Sarah Chen, maintained security while their sniper studied a target that physics and probability said couldn't be engaged with available weapon systems. What Commander Hale didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that Alina Carter didn't calculate shots the way conventional snipers did, that her understanding of external ballistics exceeded what was taught in sniper schools, and that 2,400 meters wasn't out of range if you understood that bullets didn't fly in straight lines, but followed precise parabolic trajectories that could be predicted if you knew the math. The .338 Lapua Magnum in Carter's hands was a precision instrument capable of reaching targets that most people thought impossible. But the rifle was just a tool. The real weapon was the woman behind it, a shooter who'd spent 10 years mastering ballistics that most snipers considered too complex to employ in combat, who'd made shots at ranges that appeared in record books, and who was about to demonstrate that out of range was just another way of saying, haven't found the solution yet. Commander Hale was watching through his spotting scope when the enemy sniper's head disappeared in a pink mist 2,400 meters away. 3 full seconds after Carter's rifle spoke, his expression shifted from certainty to confusion to dawning comprehension as he processed what he'd just witnessed. Staff Sergeant Carter just made a shot that, according to every manual I've read, shouldn't be possible with that weapon system. Morrison, watching through his own optics, lowered them slowly and looked at Carter with new respect. "Ma'am, I've been a SEAL for 8 years. That's the most impossible thing I've ever seen someone accomplish." Carter worked her bolt, chambered another round, and continued scanning the ridge for additional threats with the calm professionalism that came from knowing that impossible was just a matter of understanding physics better than everyone else thought necessary. "Not impossible, sir. Just requires accounting for variables that simplified ballistics tables ignore. That sniper won't be terrorizing this valley anymore. Now let's confirm the kill and clear that position before someone else takes it." The enemy sniper problem had started 4 days earlier, when Sergeant First Class David Reynolds, a good soldier with 3 combat tours, had his head removed by a precision shot while conducting a routine patrol 2 kilometers from forward operating base Phoenix. The shot had come from the Northern Ridge Complex, a series of elevated positions that dominated the valley and provided perfect overwatch for anyone with the patience and skill to exploit them. The next day, 2 more soldiers were hit, 1 killed, 1 wounded. Both shots from the Northern Ridge, both at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters, both demonstrating marksmanship that suggested professional military training. Naval Special Warfare had been operating from FOB Phoenix for 2 weeks, conducting direct action missions against high-value targets in the region. When the sniper problem emerged, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Hale, the SEAL team leader, had recognized it as a threat that needed immediate attention. "We've got a professional shooter terrorizing this valley," Hale had told his team during the briefing. 6 casualties in 3 days, all precision shots from extended range. This isn't some insurgent with an old Dragunov. This is someone who knows what they're doing. We need to eliminate this threat before they kill anyone else. Chief Petty Officer Alina Carter had studied the pattern of shootings, the terrain, the distances involved. She'd been a SEAL sniper for 6 years, had made shots in combat that appeared in training manuals, and had spent her entire adult life understanding ballistics with a depth that bordered on obsession. "The shots are coming from the Northern Ridge Complex," she'd said, pointing to the map. "Ranges from 1,400 to 1,900 meters based on victim locations. The shooter is mobile, takes a shot, displaces, returns later. Professional counter-sniper tactics." "Can you engage at those ranges?" Hale had asked. "Yes, sir. My .338 Lapua is effective out to 1,800 meters with proper conditions. Beyond that, ballistics become increasingly challenging but not impossible. We've tried air support. The sniper goes to ground before aircraft arrive. We've tried artillery. Too much civilian infrastructure nearby for effective fire missions. We need a sniper solution. Eliminate the threat with precision fire that doesn't create collateral damage." Carter had nodded. "Give me Morrison and Chen for security. We'll set up an overwatch position with clear sight lines to the ridge complex. When the sniper reveals his position, I'll engage." That had been the plan. What happened had exceeded everyone's expectations. Arter's team had moved into position at 0400 using darkness to establish an overwatch position on an elevated point that provided clear sight lines to the Northern Ridge Complex. The position was 700 meters from FOB Phoenix, elevated enough to clear intervening terrain, concealed enough to avoid enemy observation. Morrison and Chen had established security, one watching their rear, one monitoring approaches, both ready to provide suppressive fire if the position was compromised. Carter had set up her rifle, range-finding equipment, weather station, and observation tools. The .338 Lapua Magnum rifle she carried was a Macmillan TAC 338, a precision weapon system that in trained hands could reach targets at extreme range. Loaded with 300-grain bullets leaving the muzzle at 2,800 feet per second, the rifle was capable of delivering precise fire at distances that challenged conventional understanding of small arms ballistics. But the rifle was just hardware. The real advantage was Carter's understanding of how bullets behaved in flight. Most snipers learned simplified ballistics, drop tables, basic wind calls, straightforward adjustments for distance. Carter had studied advanced external ballistics, understood that bullets didn't follow simple trajectories, but were affected by dozens of variables that interacted in complex ways. She'd spent years learning about Coriolis effect, Earth's rotation affecting bullet flight, spin drift, the rifle's twist rate causing horizontal deflection, aerodynamic jump, how the bullet left the barrel, atmospheric conditions, temperature, pressure, humidity affecting drag, wind, not just speed but direction at multiple altitudes, terrain effects, how geography created microclimates that altered conditions. At 800 meters, these variables could be simplified. At 1,500 meters, they became important. At 2,400 meters, they were everything. Commander Hale had joined them at 0600, bringing his spotting scope and command presence. He was an experienced SEAL operator, respected leader, and competent shooter. But he wasn't a precision long-range specialist, and his understanding of extreme-range ballistics came from standard training that emphasized practical application over theoretical understanding. They'd waited through the morning, watching the ridge complex, looking for any sign of the enemy sniper who'd been terrorizing the valley. At 11:30, Carter's patience was rewarded. "Contact, Northern Ridge, far end. I've got movement in the rocks at approximately..." She paused, worked her laser rangefinder. 2,394 meters. Confirmed. That's our sniper setting up position. Hale swung his spotting scope to the indicated location. Through the high-powered optics, he could see a figure moving among rocks, setting up a rifle, preparing to engage targets in the valley below. Confirmed. That's our threat. He worked his own rangefinder. Range is 2,400 meters, give or take. Wind is shifting, maybe 8 to 10 knots from the east with gusts. Temperature is 32 Celsius. Atmospheric pressure. He checked his weather station. Standard for this elevation. He turned to Carter. Can you make this shot? Carter studied the target through her rifle scope. The enemy sniper was visible, just barely, as a dark shape among lighter rocks. Not a clean silhouette, but enough to identify human presence. At this distance, the target appeared tiny, barely distinguishable from surrounding terrain. She worked through her calculations. Range, 2,394 meters. Wind, 8 to 10 knots easterly but shifting. She could see vegetation at various elevations moving differently, indicating wind shear. Temperature, 32 degrees Celsius, which would affect air density and therefore drag. Humidity. She estimated 40% based on conditions. Elevation, significant, requiring adjustment for thinner air. Angle, slight upward shot requiring geometric compensation. Then, the advanced factors. Coriolis effect at this range would push the bullet right by approximately 8 inches. Spin drift from her right-hand twist barrel would add another 6 inches right. The bullet would be in flight for approximately 4 seconds, traveling in a high arc that would peak at nearly 80 feet above the bore line before descending to target. She worked through the mathematics in her head, calculations that would take most people 15 minutes with a calculator. She'd practiced this so many times that the math was instinctive. "This is outside your weapon system's effective range," Hale said, still looking through his spotting scope. "The .338 Lapua is good to about 1,800 meters in ideal conditions. We're at 2,400 with variable wind. The drop alone is, probably 350 inches? That's almost 30 feet of drop. And the wind drift, 362 inches of drop," Carter said, her voice calm. "Assuming standard atmospheric conditions, which we don't have, the temperature and elevation change that to 348 inches. Wind drift is approximately 94 inches at 10 knots steady, but the wind isn't steady. It's variable with altitude, which means I need to calculate different drift for different portions of the trajectory." Hale stared at her. "You can calculate that?" "I can approximate it. The bullet will be in flight for 3.8 seconds. During the first second, it's moving fast and is less affected by wind. During the last 2 seconds, it's moving slower and is more affected. The wind also varies by altitude. I can see from vegetation that it's stronger at mid-level than at ground level or at peak trajectory. So I need to weight my wind call toward the middle portion of flight." Hale shook his head. "That's not how they teach wind calls in sniper school. Sniper school teaches simplified methods that work at normal engagement ranges. This isn't a normal engagement range. At 2,400 meters, simplified methods introduce errors larger than the target." Morrison, listening while maintaining security, spoke up. "Ma'am, are you saying you can actually hit a target at that distance?" "I'm saying the physics allows it. Whether I execute properly is a different question. At this range, a 1-degree error in angle translates to about 42 inches of miss. A 1-knot error in wind call is 25 inches of miss. A 5-degree error in temperature estimation is 12 inches. Everything has to be right." Hale studied the distant target through his optics. The enemy sniper had completed his setup, was scanning the valley below, preparing to engage coalition forces. "Staff Sergeant, if you miss, you alert him to our position and give him time to displace. We might not get another opportunity." "Yes, sir. But if I don't engage, he continues killing our people. Risk versus benefit analysis favors taking the shot." Hale thought for a long moment, then nodded. "Make the shot, Staff Sergeant. Show me what extreme range precision looks like." Carter settled into her shooting position. The bipod was firmly planted, her body position optimized for stability. She worked through her pre-shot routine, breathing controlled, heart rate steady, mind focused. Through her Schmidt and Bender scope, the target was barely visible. Just a dark shape among rocks, made tiny by distance, wavering slightly in the heat mirage that rose from the sun-heated terrain. She dialed her elevation turret, 347 clicks, each click representing 1/4 minute of angle. Her scope was now aimed nearly 30 feet above the target, creating the parabolic trajectory needed for the bullet to reach the distant ridge. Wind was the harder problem. She studied the vegetation at various levels, estimated wind speed and direction at different altitudes, weighted her calculations toward the middle trajectory where the bullet would be slowest and most affected. She settled on 94 inches right, about 42 clicks on her windage turret. Then, the advanced corrections. Coriolis and spin drift, both pushing right. She added another 6 clicks. The angle compensation was minor at this range. She ignored it, as within her margin of error. Her rifle was now aimed at a point in empty space approximately 30 feet above and 8 feet to the left of where the target actually was. To an observer, it would look like she was aiming at nothing. But that's where the bullet needed to go to arrive at the target 3.8 seconds later. She settled her breathing, placed her finger on the trigger, waited for her natural respiratory pause, that moment between breaths where the body is stillest. The trigger broke. The .338 Lapua Magnum roared. The rifle pushed back against her shoulder with authority, and the 300-grain bullet left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second. For the first second, the bullet was supersonic, covering nearly 900 meters while dropping only about 20 inches. The wind barely affected it at this speed. For the second and third seconds, the bullet was transonic, slowing, becoming more susceptible to wind and environmental effects. It covered another 1,000 meters while dropping nearly 200 inches. Wind pushed it right. Coriolis effect added drift. Atmospheric conditions altered its path. For the final 0.8 seconds, the bullet was subsonic, slow enough that wind had maximum effect. It covered the remaining 500 meters while dropping the final 130 inches. All of this happened in the time it takes to count 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Through his spotting scope, Commander Hale watched the target. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. The enemy sniper continued scanning the valley, completely unaware that a bullet was in flight. Then, the target's head snapped back in a pink mist that was visible even at 2,400 meters. The body collapsed among the rocks. Hale stared through his optics, processing what he'd just witnessed. Holy, Staff Sergeant, you just made a shot that shouldn't be possible. Carter worked her bolt, ejecting the spent cartridge, chambering a fresh round. It's possible if you understand the ballistics. The shot was good, but I need to confirm the kill and check for additional threats. She studied the target area through her scope. No movement, no other personnel visible. The enemy sniper who'd terrorized the valley for 3 days was dead from a shot taken at a range that most people would consider impossible. Morrison lowered his rifle. "Ma'am, I've been in the teams for 8 years. I've seen some incredible shooting. But that," he shook his head, "that just redefined what I thought was possible with a rifle." Chen, maintaining rear security, spoke without taking her eyes off her sector. Did she really just hit a human-sized target at 2,400 meters? That's like 1.5 miles. That's not shooting. That's ballistic missile guidance. More like artillery, Morrison said, except artillery doesn't usually hit on the first shot. Hale continued staring through his spotting scope, studying the distant target that wasn't moving. "Carter, walk me through that shot. How did you calculate all those variables?" "External ballistics software, sir. I've got a ballistic calculator that accounts for all the major factors: range, wind, temperature, pressure, humidity, Coriolis, spin drift, angle. I input the conditions, it outputs the corrections. Then, I verify against my own understanding of the physics to ensure the calculator isn't giving me bad data." "You have software that does this?" "Yes, sir. It's available to anyone. But most snipers don't train at ranges where these calculations matter. At 800 meters, you can use simplified methods and still hit. At 1,500 meters, you need to start accounting for advanced factors. At 2,400 meters, you need to account for everything, and your margin of error becomes smaller than the target. So anyone with this software could make that shot." "No, sir. The software provides data. Execution is different. At this range, a tiny error in shooting fundamentals, a 1/4-inch error in stock weld, a half-pound variation in trigger pull, a slight cant in the rifle, translates to feet of error at the target. The ballistics knowledge gets you close. The shooting fundamentals determine whether you hit." Hale nodded slowly. "That's why they train SEAL snipers for years instead of weeks. The shooting fundamentals have to be perfect." Yes, sir. And even with perfect fundamentals, this shot had maybe a 30% probability of success. The variables are too complex, the calculations too dependent on accurate estimation of conditions. I made my best calculations, executed as well as I could, and got lucky that everything came together. 30% success probability? You took a shot with 70% chance of failure? Better than 0% chance of stopping that sniper, sir. Sometimes you take the shot you have rather than the shot you want. Morrison spoke up again. Ma'am, with respect, that wasn't luck. That was the most technically precise piece of shooting I've ever witnessed. You calculated ballistics that would take me hours to figure out, made them in minutes, and put a bullet exactly where you intended, at a range most people would call impossible. That's not 30%, that's skill. Carter remained focused on her scope, scanning for threats. Skill improves probability. Doesn't guarantee success. Physics and probability still apply. I got lucky that wind didn't shift during the 4-second flight time, lucky that my range estimation was accurate, lucky that my calculations were correct. Good shooting creates opportunities for success. Luck determines whether those opportunities convert to hits. Carter, I'm going to respectfully disagree, Hale said. I've been a SEAL for 15 years. I've worked with some of the best shooters in the military. What you just did wasn't luck. That was expertise at a level that exceeds what's taught in our training pipeline. Where did you learn to shoot at these ranges? Years of practice, sir. I've been shooting competitively since I was 12. Long-range precision shooting where distances routinely exceed 1,500 meters. When I joined the Navy and became a sniper, I continued training at extended ranges because I understood that modern rifles are capable of much more than conventional training teaches. I spent my off-duty time learning advanced ballistics, studying atmospheric effects, calculating trajectories that most military snipers never need. When a situation like this develops, when we need to engage a target at extreme range, that training becomes relevant. So you've been preparing for this specific scenario? Not this specific scenario, sir, but I've been preparing for situations where conventional solutions don't work and advanced techniques become necessary. This qualified. Hale lowered his spotting scope. We need to confirm that kill. Chen, Morrison, prepare to move. We're going to that ridge to confirm the enemy sniper is deceased and gather intelligence. Carter, you maintain overwatch during our approach. Yes, sir. The confirmation took 90 minutes. Hale led Morrison and Chen on a careful approach to the northern ridge, moving through terrain that provided cover while Carter maintained overwatch with her rifle. If there were additional enemy forces, she'd engage them while the team maneuvered. When they reached the position where the enemy sniper had been operating, they found exactly what Carter's shot had accomplished. The sniper was deceased, killed by a single .338 Lapua Magnum round that had struck him in the upper chest, just below the neck, and exited through his back. The wound pattern was consistent with extreme-range precision fire, the bullet having traveled nearly 2,400 meters before impact. Hale examined the body, gathered intelligence. The sniper was wearing professional military gear, not coalition equipment, but high-quality tactical clothing and load-bearing equipment that suggested training and resources. His rifle was a Russian-made ORSIST 5000, a precision weapon system used by professional military snipers. His ammunition, optics, and equipment all indicated someone with advanced training. This wasn't some insurgent, Hale reported over the radio. This was a professional sniper, probably foreign military. We've got Russian equipment, professional setup, evidence of sustained operations. This guy had been hunting coalition forces with intent and capability. Carter, maintaining overwatch from her position, responded. Confirmed, sir. The shots he was making, the precision, the range, the consistency, all indicated professional training. That's why I needed to engage at extreme range. A shooter with this level of skill wouldn't have presented a closer opportunity. Morrison was examining the rifle and equipment. Ma'am, this guy had a range card showing distances to various points in the valley. 1,400 meters, 1,600 meters, 1,900 meters, all the ranges where he'd been making shots. He'd prepared this position, done his homework, set up for extended operations. He was systematic, professional, deadly. And now he's not, Chen added. That shot just eliminated a significant threat to coalition operations in this valley. Hale picked up a notebook near the sniper's position, a logbook showing dates, targets, distances, conditions. The enemy sniper had been documenting his kills, treating the operation like a professional assignment rather than irregular warfare. 6 coalition soldiers killed, 12 wounded, ranges from 1,400 to 1,900 meters, all precision shots demonstrating advanced marksmanship. This confirms what we suspected, Hale said. This wasn't random violence. This was a trained sniper conducting counter-coalition operations with specific objectives. Carter's shot just ended a campaign that could have killed dozens more soldiers if it had continued. As they gathered intelligence materials, Chen suddenly called out, "Contact! Movement northeast, approximately 500 meters, multiple personnel approaching our position." Hale immediately assessed the tactical situation. They were on an exposed ridge with limited cover, carrying intelligence materials that needed extraction, with unknown hostile forces approaching. "Carter, we've got movement inbound. Can you see them from your position?" Through her scope from the overwatch position, Carter had elevated perspective that the team on the ridge didn't have. She scanned the indicated direction, spotted the threat immediately. "Confirmed. I count 8 to 10 personnel, armed, moving tactical. They appear to be reinforcements for the sniper position. ETA to your location approximately 3 minutes. Can you engage?" Carter ranged the approaching force. "Range is 1,900 meters from my position. I can engage, but at that distance with moving targets, success probability drops significantly. Recommend you prepare defensive positions, and I'll provide precision fire support." "Copy that. Morrison, Chen, establish defensive positions. We're holding this ridge until QRF can reach us." The situation had evolved from a simple confirmation mission to a defensive action against superior numbers. The team on the ridge had 3 SEALs against 8 to 10 enemy combatants approaching with intent. But they also had something the enemy didn't, an Overwatch sniper who just demonstrated the ability to make impossible shots. Carter selected her first target, the lead element of the approaching force, someone who appeared to be directing others. Range 1,887 meters. Wind steady now, approximately 6 knots. She calculated, adjusted, and fired. The 300-grain bullet covered the distance in 2.9 seconds. The lead fighter dropped. The formation immediately halted, seeking cover, trying to identify where the shot had come from. Carter worked her bolt, selected the second target, someone attempting to rally the others. Range 1,901 meters, slight adjustment for increased distance. She fired again. The second fighter fell. The enemy force was now suppressed, pinned by precision fire from an unknown location. They couldn't see Carter's position 1,900 meters away. They only knew that anyone who exposed themselves was getting shot with devastating accuracy. 2 enemy KIA, Carter reported. Remaining personnel are pinned in rocky area approximately 400 meters from your position. They're not advancing, but they're not retreating either. Hale assessed the tactical situation. "Can you keep them pinned until QRF arrives?" "Yes, sir. I've got sufficient ammunition and they don't know where I'm shooting from. As long as they stay in that position, they're effectively neutralized." "Copy that. QRF is 20 minutes out. Keep those hostiles suppressed." For the next 18 minutes, Carter maintained precision overwatch fire that kept the enemy force pinned in position. Whenever someone tried to move, she engaged, not always hitting at 1,900 meters with moving targets, but getting close enough that the enemy understood that movement meant getting shot at with remarkable accuracy. She fired 8 more rounds, scored 3 additional hits, and kept the remaining 5 enemy fighters so thoroughly suppressed that they couldn't effectively maneuver or engage Hale's team on the ridge. When the QRF arrived, 2 Black Hawk helicopters with door gunners and a ground element, the enemy force attempted to retreat. Carter engaged the retreat, dropping 1 more fighter before the survivors scattered into terrain where they couldn't be effectively engaged. Final count: 6 enemy KIA, unknown number wounded, remainder scattered. Hale's team had 0 casualties, had successfully gathered intelligence from the enemy sniper's position, and had defended against a numerically superior force through superior tactics and exceptional precision fire support. As the helicopters extracted Hale's team and the intelligence materials, Carter maintained her overwatch position until everyone was safely airborne. Only then did she break down her equipment and move to her own extraction point. The mission had evolved from a single extreme-range precision shot into a sustained precision fire support operation that had eliminated multiple threats across distances that most snipers would consider impossible. Carter had fired 13 rounds total, one at 2,400 meters that eliminated the primary target, 12 more at ranges from 1,800 to 1,900 meters that had suppressed and eliminated secondary threats, 13 rounds, 7 confirmed enemy KIA, 6 more enemy combatants suppressed and scattered, 0 friendly casualties. The after-action report would describe it as exemplary precision marksmanship under combat conditions. But for Carter, it was simply the application of skills she'd spent years developing, employed at the moment when those skills became tactically necessary. The after-action debrief took place that evening in the operations center. The SEAL team, FOB Phoenix commander, and intelligence personnel reviewed what had happened. Commander Hale presented the facts. At approximately 11:35 hours, Chief Petty Officer Carter engaged and eliminated an enemy sniper at a range of 2,394 meters, verified by laser rangefinder. The target was deceased on scene, killed by a single precision shot. Intelligence materials recovered indicate the enemy sniper was a trained professional conducting systematic operations against coalition forces. Carter's shot eliminated a significant threat and ended a 3-day period where 6 coalition personnel were killed and 12 wounded. The FOB commander, a Army lieutenant colonel, studied the range data. 2,400 meters, that's nearly a mile and a half. I wasn't aware that infantry weapons could engage at that distance. They can't, sir, Hale said. Not reliably. This shot was at the extreme edge of what's possible with current weapon systems, and only succeeded because Chief Carter has specialized training in extreme-range precision shooting that exceeds what's taught in standard military sniper courses. Explain. Carter stepped forward. Sir, standard sniper training teaches engagement techniques effective to approximately 800 meters with occasional shots to 1,200 meters. These ranges are appropriate for most combat scenarios and represent what most snipers will encounter. My background includes competitive long-range precision shooting where distances routinely exceed 1,500 meters. When I joined Naval Special Warfare, I continued training at extended ranges, studying advanced ballistics and atmospheric effects that become significant at extreme distances. Today's shot applied that specialized training to a tactical problem that couldn't be solved through conventional means. The colonel studied her. You're saying you trained yourself beyond military standards? I'm saying military training provides a foundation that's appropriate for most scenarios. When situations exceed those standards, when you need to engage at ranges beyond conventional capability, additional training becomes relevant. I prepared for those situations through years of practice that weren't required by the military, but proved useful when circumstances demanded. And you calculated all the ballistics for a 2,400-meter shot how? That's artillery-level mathematics. External ballistic software combined with understanding of atmospheric effects, sir. The software calculates trajectories based on input conditions. My role was providing accurate data about range, wind, temperature, and other variables, then executing the fundamentals properly. The technology does the complex mathematics. The shooter provides accurate inputs and proper execution. So with this software, any sniper could make that shot? No, sir. The software provides calculations, not capability. Execution at extreme range requires shooting fundamentals developed through years of practice, trigger control, breathing, position, follow-through. Small errors that might not matter at 400 meters become mission failures at 2,400 meters. The shot succeeded because the calculations were correct and the execution was precise. Remove either element and the shot fails. The colonel nodded. Commander Hale, your assessment of Chief Carter's performance? Exceptional, sir. She identified a tactical problem that conventional methods couldn't solve. An enemy sniper at extreme range in a position where artillery and air support weren't practical solutions. She calculated a precision engagement at a distance I would have considered impossible with available weapons. She executed flawlessly and eliminated a significant threat. Then, when the tactical situation evolved and we encountered additional hostile forces, she provided precision fire support across 1,900 meters that kept enemy combatants suppressed until QRF could reach us. 13 rounds fired, 7 confirmed enemy KIA, 0 friendly casualties. This is exactly the kind of specialized capability that Special Operations brings to combat environments. Agreed. Chief Carter, this engagement will be documented in the after-action report and submitted for commendation. You've eliminated a threat that was significantly impacting coalition operations and demonstrated capabilities that should be shared with the broader sniper community. I'm recommending you for recognition and asking that you develop training materials documenting extreme range techniques for other military snipers. Yes, sir. I'll prepare documentation of the methods and calculations used for today's engagement. His story of the 2,400-meter shot spread through naval special warfare with the speed that remarkable achievements always traveled through tight-knit communities. Within days, snipers throughout SEAL teams were discussing the technical aspects, how Carter had calculated the ballistics, what equipment she'd used, what techniques enabled success at ranges that most people considered impossible. The shot appeared in sniper training courses as a case study in extreme range precision, with instructors using it to demonstrate what became possible when theoretical ballistics knowledge combined with exceptional shooting fundamentals. But for Carter, the shot wasn't about setting records or demonstrating capability. It was about solving a tactical problem that was killing coalition soldiers. The enemy sniper had been a legitimate threat, operating at ranges where conventional responses failed. Someone needed to engage him at his own game, at distances where he felt safe. Carter had the training and tools to do that, so she'd done it. 3 months later, she was back at Naval Special Warfare training facilities, teaching advanced long-range precision shooting to SEAL snipers who wanted to understand how to engage targets at ranges beyond conventional training. The mathematics isn't complicated, she'd tell students. It's just detailed. You're accounting for more variables than simplified tables consider. Bullet drop, wind drift, Coriolis effect, spin drift, atmospheric conditions. Each factor has a formula, each formula has inputs, and if you know the inputs, you can calculate the outputs. The hard part isn't the math. The hard part is accurate input data. If your range estimation is off by 50 meters, your calculations are wrong. If your wind call is off by 2 knots, you miss. If your temperature estimate is wrong by 10 degrees, you're calculating for conditions that don't exist. Garbage in, garbage out. The precision of your calculations depends entirely on the accuracy of your input data. And even with perfect calculations, you still need perfect execution. At 2,400 meters, a tiny error in your shooting fundamentals translates to feet of error at the target. Your trigger control has to be flawless, your breathing has to be controlled, your position has to be stable. Everything has to be right because at these ranges, anything less than perfect is a miss. Students would practice the calculations, learn the formulas, understand the theory. But most importantly, they'd learn that extreme range precision wasn't magic. It was the application of physics and mathematics to a ballistic problem, combined with shooting fundamentals developed through thousands of hours of practice. Some would never attempt shots at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. Others would find themselves in situations like Carter had faced, tactical problems that required solutions beyond conventional capability. For those situations, the training would provide tools and techniques that made the impossible become possible. 5 years after the 2,400-meter shot, Carter had retired from active duty and was teaching advanced marksmanship at civilian precision shooting schools. She'd become recognized as one of the foremost experts in extreme range ballistics, someone who could translate complex physics into practical shooting applications. Students would ask about the famous shot, the SEAL sniper who'd engaged an enemy at nearly 1.5 miles. She'd tell them the story, but always with emphasis on the context. "That shot succeeded because circumstances aligned," she'd explain. "I had good equipment, accurate range data, relatively stable conditions, and enough time to calculate properly. Change any of those variables, and the shot might have failed. I've made other shots at extreme range that did fail, where my calculations were wrong, or conditions changed during bullet flight, or my execution wasn't good enough. Success at these ranges requires everything to be right, and that doesn't happen every time. The lesson isn't that you should attempt shots at 2,400 meters routinely. The lesson is that when you have no other options, when conventional solutions don't work, and lives depend on success, advanced techniques can provide capabilities that seem impossible until you understand the underlying physics. But you need to practice those techniques before you need them. You can't learn extreme range ballistics during an emergency. You learn them through years of study and practice, so that when the situation demands, when there's an enemy sniper at 2,400 meters and he needs to be stopped, you have the tools and skills to make it happen." Her students would nod, take notes, try to understand how someone calculated trajectories that took 4 seconds to complete and involved mathematics that most people found overwhelming. Some would master the techniques, others would gain appreciation for the complexity involved, even if they never applied it in practice. All would leave understanding that the limits of what was possible with rifles were determined not by the weapons themselves, but by the knowledge and skill of the people behind them. Commander Marcus Hale, who'd witnessed the shot through his spotting scope, eventually wrote about it in his memoir after retiring from naval special warfare. "I'd been a SEAL for 15 years when I watched Chief Carter make a shot I'd thought was impossible. I'd seen incredible marksmanship, shots at 800 meters, 1,000-meter engagements, precision fire under conditions that would challenge Olympic shooters. But watching someone engage a human target at 2,400 meters with a conventional rifle redefined what I understood about precision shooting. What impressed me wasn't just the successful hit. It was the methodology, the systematic approach to a problem that seemed unsolvable through conventional thinking. Carter didn't look at the extreme range and give up because it exceeded standard capability. She looked at it as a ballistics problem that could be solved through proper calculation and execution. She understood something that many military snipers never learn, that the rifles we carry are capable of much more than standard training teaches, and that out of range is often a limitation of knowledge rather than equipment. With proper understanding of external ballistics and enough practice to execute fundamentally sound shots, you can engage targets at distances that seem impossible until someone demonstrates otherwise. That shot, that single precisely calculated engagement at nearly 1.5 miles, eliminated a threat that had killed 6 coalition soldiers and wounded 12 more. It ended a 3-day terror campaign that was impacting operations across the entire valley. One shooter, one bullet, one impossibly long shot that succeeded because someone had spent years preparing for a situation most people would never encounter. That's what special operations is about, not just being good at what everyone else does, being capable of accomplishing what everyone else says can't be done. Chief Carter demonstrated that principle with a shot that still seems impossible every time I remember watching it through my spotting scope. The enemy sniper's logbook, recovered from the scene, was translated and analyzed by intelligence personnel. It confirmed what the evidence suggested: a professional military sniper conducting systematic operations against coalition forces with specific tactical objectives. His notes documented his methodology. Patience, wait for targets to present themselves. Precision, only engage at ranges where success was probable. Displacement, never fire more than twice from the same position. Persistence, maintain operations until killed or reassigned. He'd been good, professional, deadly. He'd killed 6 coalition soldiers and wounded 12 more through careful application of professional sniper tactics. What he hadn't anticipated was encountering someone better. Someone willing to engage at ranges he'd thought provided safety. Someone who understood ballistics at a level that exceeded his own considerable training. Someone who'd made a shot he probably couldn't have calculated, let alone executed. The war continues with its own ruthless mathematics. Superior training, better equipment, more knowledge. These provide advantages that translate to survival and success. The enemy sniper had been well trained, but Carter had been better trained. He'd had good equipment, but hers had been better. He'd understood ballistics, but she'd understood them more completely. And on a morning in a valley where he'd thought himself safe at 2,400 meters, he'd learned the final lesson that all warriors eventually learn, that there's always someone better, and underestimating your opponent is the last mistake you ever make. Chief Petty Officer Alina Carter, the SEAL sniper who made the shot the commander said was impossible, the shooter who demonstrated that out of range was just another way of saying, haven't done the math yet. She'd studied ballistics that most snipers never learned, practiced at ranges that most people considered impractical, calculated trajectories that required understanding physics at a level that exceeded military training standards, and when the situation demanded, when coalition soldiers were dying and conventional solutions didn't work, she'd applied all that knowledge and skill to eliminate a threat at a distance that seemed impossible. 2,400 meters, one shot, 4 seconds of bullet flight time. Calculations accounting for dozens of variables that interacted in complex ways. Execution requiring shooting fundamentals so precise that minor errors meant failure. The mathematics worked, the ballistics were sound, the shot was perfect. And Commander Hale, watching through his spotting scope, learned that sometimes impossible just means you need someone who understands the physics better than everyone else thought necessary. Every single time. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of courage.